Once upon a time, SMS used to stand for Short Message Service. Well, now it stands for the most authentic racing simulator on the planet. Slightly Mad Studios, despite their relatively small team, have hit an exceptional home run with this one. On release day alone, I accumulated multiple sore fingers on both hands. My legs cramped repeatedly, and I have cut a section of my foot chasing my daughter around and tripping over my own pedals. Grab yourself a cuppa, there is a lot to talk about. Slightly Mad Studios and Bandai Namco have really delivered with Project Cars 2. It was released on the 21st of September 2017. It will set you back anywhere between £30 and £70 depending on which package you want to go for and where you buy it. There's an additional seasonal pass for an additional £24.99, and that is going to bring 4 additional DLCs which will include cars, tracks, career events and liveries. It's available on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, and like you, I heard a lot of reviews before this game was released from a lot of highly respected YouTubers. Now I have to say, they were all using PR release versions, not the actual release day version, and there was a lot of positivity coming from them, but also quite a bit of negativity. Overall, it gave a kind of a subdued review. In my humble opinion, this game is basically 98% perfection, and I absolutely love it. I was completely addicted to this game within about 10 laps on release day. I just spent the whole day racing. After a solid 12 hours of racing and inspecting, I don't think that I've even scratched 1% of what this title offers, or indeed my own potential. This is a racing simulator that makes all other racing simulators feel like games. This is simply amazing. I love the feel, the number of settings and options that are available to you, the weather, the cars, the racing disciplines. To be honest with you, before I played this game, I didn't even know that I liked stock car or Rallycross. Let's start with the cars. There are 180 very nicely modelled cars spanning over 9 different racing disciplines. You've got all the big names and all the big cars, modern and historical. Thankfully, there are a lot more cars than there were in Project Cars 1. There is now a depth of options, and there's an excessive number of liveries available too, which is a nice touch. When you're racing, you don't really want everybody to look the same. Car models are painstakingly detailed down to the tyres. Okay, I think, or I understand, there is only one tyre type at the moment, and that is the 3-part setter tyre model with its bleeding edge physics. This is the first time that tyres have been modelled in a simulator, and if you ask any racing driver how important tyres are, they will go over the top. These are the most important pieces for a car, the tyres, and it just seems ridiculous that it's never been done before. It makes a huge difference. This is a very complicated area, and this is a first, basically version 1 example of tyre modelling. There is definitely more that can be done in this area. I'm going to include a link in the description below so that if you want to read up more about the tyre model and how it works, you can go and do that. Slightly Mad Studio pulled in real-world racing drivers and testing drivers, and they have tested each car, and the manufacturers of those cars have also overseen development. They've given their seal of approval over the modelling, the performance and, most importantly, the handling. Each car has an exceptional car damage model. Internal and exterior damage is modelled very accurately. Debris is left on the track, and despite lots of searching, I'm not sure if you can get punctures. With the tyre model as good as it is, it would be absolutely crazy not to have punctures. But I haven't seen anybody who's had one, and I haven't been able to get one, and I haven't been able to confirm whether or not punctures are modelled in this game. But I would be shocked if they're not. And if they're not, then maybe that's something that's coming in the future. Repair time for damaged elements is time relative and can be managed via the in-car management system. The pit crews are fully animated, and you can run this in a manual or an assisted way. And everything in this game can be run in a manual or assisted way. Starting the engines, turning the lights on, using the wipers, everything can be manual. This is an absolutely exceptional simulator. Now, there is a learning curve to this, and I don't really mean driving skill. This is unlike any other racing simulator before. The reason why it's different than anything else is because it's better than anything else. There are a few small gaps in the car options. There's no Formula 1 cars, except for the historical F1 cars. There are no F1 cars at all. I haven't seen any confirmation that the Steam Workshop will be available for modelling, or liveries for that matter, but hopefully something will be coming along in regards to setups for tracks and liveries, and who knows, we might even get some tracks in the future. Unlikely, but it'd be really, really nice to see that. I do feel that the tyre screech when you're driving is somewhat exaggerated. Now, whether or not this is intentional, I don't know. Whether or not this is just me and my driving style, I don't know. But it seems incredibly easy to lock a brake and exceed the capabilities of the tyres. The way that tyres being less solid than you would find in any other simulator really makes this feel completely different. It does, however, fill in some of the missing information that you would get from a real car, and that encourages you to drive in a more controlled fashion, and that can only be a good thing. Some of the AI collisions that I've watched are like wind-up frogs being wound up, chucked in together, and they're just bouncing and jumping into the air. That doesn't seem wholly realistic to me. It's almost like there's no weight to the cars, and well, I'll discuss it later, but AI collisions are something you're going to see a lot of, especially in the early days of Project Cars 2. In all honesty, when I first started the game, it felt like I was driving a boat. The ability to catch a slide before it wrecks you feels kind of odd. It's very unique to this game. And then of course you get the kind of whiplash effect, where the car and the suspension and everything pulls the car back into line, and also you've got the internal camera, which again exaggerates this even more as your character is being thrown around as the car's trying to get itself back on an even keel. Initially, the speed that I was experiencing didn't really match what I was seeing. I was going way faster than it looked. I felt like I was doing 20-30 miles an hour, and in reality I was doing 60 or 70, but it just didn't feel like I was. It took me quite a while, somewhere between 10 and 100 laps, before my brain synced with the game, and then when it did, oh my goodness me. I can't see myself racing any other sims. I'm always going to come back to this. This is way above anything else I've ever played. It's so good, in fact, that this game is going to make me a better sim racer, period. I have learnt so much about braking and weight distribution because I can feel it properly. I've learnt how to use the brakes and the accelerator in order to corner better because I can feel it properly. I have learnt so much in a short time, and every car has its own learning curve, which is fantastic. It means you can't just jump in and go. Well, actually that's not true, sometimes you can. If the car that you've jumped in matches you well, then you're away. The different disciplines, 9 in total, are not just bolted onto the side. These have been thought out and they work really well. I know a few people have complained about this, but honestly, from my perspective, it has covered all the bases exceptionally well. The initial ground model is so good, they could basically turn any car discipline utilising their tyre modelling and car physics. It's just sensational. The tyre models are absolutely epic. It's the foundation upon which everything else fits into place. Without that tyre model, this game wouldn't feel half as good as it does. Now, I know other people have done things with tyres. You've got F117, they've implemented punctures from debris in their most recent release, and also Assetto Corsa have done some work on tyre modelling. And I wouldn't be surprised if Assetto were working on something in the background, maybe in secret, modelling tyres themselves. Regardless, tyre modelling is very new. I'm sure you've heard it said before. PCs, or rather computer simulations, are very good at modelling solid metal objects, but not so good at modelling fluid items. Air, for example, is a complicated, incredibly, unbelievably complicated process, and they've done an exceptional job, but this is still early days. Tyre modelling is something that every simulator from now on in is going to have to at least consider, and I'm telling you now, Project Cars have definitely got the lead in this area. Assetto Corsa might surprise everybody and come out with their own tyre model in the next few months, maybe in the next year, but yeah, certainly this is the new area of development. People will be looking at this, and if it's not present, it's going to be a black mark against their name, most definitely. So there are absolutely loads of cars to choose from, and there are more to come with 4 DLCs planned for next year. more than 3 times the amount of cars that Project Cars 1 had, and the big names have joined us. You've got the McLaren 720S, you've got the Ford GT, you've got the LMP1 hybrids, and you've got open-wheeled F1 historical cars. But not only do you have these massive big names and some beautifully modelled cars, you've got some really sensible cars in there too. The Ginetta G40 Junior, perfect for beginners, and I don't just mean in this game, I mean in real life too. The Ginetta G40 is widely renowned as being the best starting car for racing drivers who are seriously looking to go pro. Have a definite look at the Ginetta G40 if you're new to the game, and I think you're going to have a lovely experience with it. The number of tracks in Project Cars 2 is an incredible 60 tracks. This is a combination of real and fictitious tracks. There are 20 laser scanned tracks using the new technology photogrammetry. Photogrammetry allows you to capture not only the track but also the surroundings, and it really helps boost the atmosphere of the track and makes it look incredibly realistic. Each track has multiple layouts and variations. There are multiple disciplines as well. You've got the traditional road tracks, you've got Rallycross, you've got IndyCar, of which Project Cars has the official license, and you also have Speedway as well. The tracks, I have to say, are sublime, really good. They're clean, they're clear, and they're very realistic. There is a lot to choose from, and each one, as I say, has a variation of layouts. You've got the old classics, you've got the Autodrome National at Monza, you've got the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. There are a host of British tracks to enjoy as well from a British perspective, and don't forget there are more DLCs to come. Now, if there's anything in Project Cars that's as big or as important as the tyre modelling, then it's LiveTrack 3.0. This gives us true, real-life, dynamic surface conditions. To put that into perspective, LiveTrack 3.0 doesn't just model the track, but it also manages the fluid dynamics on the track, like rain that has caught and turned into puddles and what have you. There's the loose dirt and the gravel, and there's damaged parts on the track too. You can race at any time, any season, any weather condition, and you've got so many multiple options, it's ridiculous. You can race on tarmac, you can race on dirt, and you can race on ice. The track temperatures change based on the angle of the sun. This means that if you've got shadows over the track, you're going to have hot and cold sections of track, which change the amount of grip that you're going to get throughout the day or the weekend. Puddles accumulate if it rains, and the rubber laid down on track, which is so important, will not only improve and change to the racing line, which is completely dynamic, but it will stay for an entire race weekend. This is sensational. No other simulator comes close to modeling anything like this, anything close to being like this. We can race full 24-hour cycles. We can have weather fluctuations. This will change where and how the track has grip. This will change the racing line. And I promise you now, when the weather changes, you will notice it. I have to kind of question how accurate the laser scan tracks are. It feels to me that some of the tracks are missing some finite bumps and lumps and nipples. I feel them in other sims, but not so much here in Project Cars 2. My question is this new technology as accurate? Is using photogrammetry really capturing every single little nook and cranny, if you will? I have also a bit of a complaint about the track rules, which are controlled and delivered via the race director. To be nice, I'd say it was a bit harsh, but in reality, sometimes I have absolutely no idea why my lap times have been deleted, or sometimes you need to concede a place. It doesn't always translate into a logical reason, and it's very frustrating. Also, the indication that the race director has demanded that you concede a place or cancel the lap time is not necessarily that obvious. When you're doing 180 miles an hour into a tight left-hand corner, you're not really looking out for a tiny indicator like that. I think maybe that needs to be bigger and more prominent, just so that you don't miss it. In my humble opinion, now I love the weather, don't get me wrong, but I think the fog is rather poorly animated. When the fog is present and you're trying to watch the cars drive past, it all goes a bit weird, and it certainly doesn't look next gen to me. Again, the puddle splash has not really impressed me a huge amount. I like the idea, the premise is good, and to be honest, the difference it makes is huge, I don't know, maybe I was expecting a little bit more, but to be fair, this is a huge drag on FPS, so some concessions do need to be made. Even the fictitious tracks are absolutely extraordinary, so good in fact that one day I think they might be built. Do you remember the first time that a movie was made after the game? Well, that's something that could genuinely happen here with the tracks. They are really nice, and I am incredibly impressed. If I was to be in any way negative about them, they do feel a little bit too clean. There aren't enough bumps and shakes and rips and nipples and, you know, that kind of undulating bit of track that you need to remember when you're coming into a corner. It doesn't really exist so much. Maybe a little bit more undulation could be required in that area. Regarding the lack of bumps and lumps, I do wonder whether or not that could be the tyre model that is making that seem less prominent. You have to remember that when a car tyre in Assetto Corsa, for example, drives over a bump or a lump, it's a solid element. It doesn't really absorb any of that bump or lump. And I do wonder whether or not the tyre modelling has perhaps made that more of a subtle experience. It's perfectly logical that that is what it could be. Either way, this is not in any way a deal breaker. The tracks are wonderfully modelled and they are great fun to drive on. The dynamic surface changes and the weather changes, everything changes on track. It is absolutely fantastic. As I said already, even over the course of a race weekend, as more and more rubber is laid down, the racing line changes, everything changes on track. It is absolutely absorbing. This exceeds anything that any other sim has done by absolutely miles. There are 9 disciplines to choose from and each have their variations. There are more to come and it's just endless fun. Thanks to the photogrammetry, the track's surroundings are not only accurate but they just really add to the atmosphere. Everything about the tracks in Project Cars 2 has really impressed me. I think it's fabulous. Quite honestly, Project Cars 2 is just on another level in every area. The features, the configuration, the physics, the animation, all of it is just superb. This is groundbreaking stuff in all of the right areas. It's clever enough as well to make it versatile, allowing bespoke setups for bespoke PC configs to run regardless of what your limitations are. The skybox cloud effects and the lighting effects are wonderful. You even get lightning. The track side is nice, it's accurate, it's realistic, it's absolutely sensational. They've also included a mechanic. I've never once been able to go to a mechanic and explain my car troubles without resorting to sound effects. It makes a kind of a doo-ga-dun, doo-ga-dun, doo-ga-dun kind of noise when I'm going around corners. All that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. The mechanic will help you. It will teach new players about how to set up their cars, and it enables them to learn how to do it and where things tally and the importance of doing it. And not only that, the benefits of having bespoke car setups. It's no good me telling you what my car setup is. It's all about you, the car, and how you work together. This is such a good feature. This isn't an area of Project Cars 2 which is leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, but it is a great feature and I'm glad to see it in there. And all of the settings are clear and pretty understandable. This allows you some really good fine-tuning for your system and your gaming setup. Having said that, you alone will have to tweak your settings until you find that really special setup for you and your system. What you have to take into consideration is that the changing weather effect can have a dramatic FPS influence. The rain, the fog and the snow can all drop FPS significantly, and if you don't want to experience stutters and a bit of FPS drop and lag during the middle of a race when an unexpected rain cloud drops on you, then you need to think about that when you're setting up your system. It's all well and good to be running at 90 FPS during a hot blazing sunny day, but if it suddenly starts raining and your FPS drops below 60, you're not going to enjoy that experience a great deal, and if it starts to stutter, then you're really going to be disappointed. Physics in Project Cars 2 has just been improved across the board. The performance increase as a result of that is actually pretty incredible. This game is basically future-proof, and VR, something which I haven't yet got into because of the cost and the fact that it makes me feel a bit seasick. Having looked at a lot of reviews from VR players, VR is running exceptionally well in this game. LiveTrack 3.0 dynamic changing effects graphically and how that affects the feel of a race is just superb. The dynamic racing line changes, the surface temperatures change, the liquid physics change. This is immeasurably advanced, and not forgetting of course how all of that impacts upon the tyre model. This is just next gen +1. This is superb stuff. So absolutely everything in Project Cars 2 is brilliant. It's improved, except for the AI. AI is most likely the hardest of all the aspects that make up a racing simulator. And Project Cars 2 has improved AI in some areas. The positives are, let me see here, they do make mistakes. Sometimes they'll overshoot a corner, they'll come off the track, and they'll even wipe themselves out. This is all good to see. They'll have little battles between themselves, and you can hang back and watch that and capitalise on them fighting each other and making small mistakes. They can be aggressive, they do take chances. If you leave them an open spot, they most likely will take it. Now that's an adjustable feature, so you can really wrap that up so that they'll take you at any given opportunity, or you can bring it down if you find that they're misjudging that quite a lot and taking you out. There's a good balance of tweaking in order for you to get the right competitive feel for your own current skill level, and as you grow and improve, you can tweak that and it will grow and improve with you. AI cars do actively seem to avoid collisions with you and even sometimes each other, but this is where the realism kind of falls off the edge of a cliff slightly. But the AI cars, the biggest problems by far are the first corners. Oh my goodness me, the first corners are hilarious. Basically everybody stops, gets out, has a cup of tea, does a bit of shopping, or they just all drive into each other. You'll have cars flying up in the air, you'll have cars wiping out repeatedly on corner 1. Corner 1 for AI in Project Cars 2 is a massive issue. They cannot seem to cope with driving slowly but still being competitive. They are really struggling with that. Slow speeds, cornering finesse and cornering racing lines are very odd. I've seen some incredibly strange behaviours, not just in my own gameplay but on videos on YouTube. There is a lot of work that needs to go into AI. It's definitely the weakest point of Project Cars 2. AI cars will not only wipe themselves out, but they will wipe you out as well. Now this is not necessarily always going to be the AI's fault, but although they do try and avoid you, if you have an incident and maybe your car is slightly in a position that it shouldn't be, or you lift off the accelerator because you feel that you're going to lose control, yeah, they're going to take you out. I mean, this is racing. You can't just be completely impermeable to the racing cars around you. AI aren't going to take you out sometimes. Maybe the amount of times you get taken out by AI is a bit too high. I have to say that it is kind of relevant on the discipline of which you're racing in as well. But they do, maybe for me, try and avoid you a little bit too much, and that kind of causes a knock-on effect. And if they're trying to avoid you and there's another car next to them, then they're going to wipe out, and that could end up wiping you out, and then you could have a first corner massive 20-car pile-up, which is something that you will most likely see in Project Cars 2 at least once or twice in your lifetime. Also, I've found that the AI cars don't appear to be quite as affected by the weather conditions. Not only if there's puddles and aquaplaning, they don't seem to be affected by that a great deal, I have to say, but also in terms of light. Now, when the sun drops and the sunbeams are coming basically directly into your car, it can be very difficult to see the corner. This might encourage you to just ease off a tad so that you don't come in too fast and miss your braking point. AI cars do not have that problem. So is that an issue, or is that just a thing that you just have to deal with? Is artificially causing the cars to slow down because of the light beams coming through the windscreen going a step too far? Probably. But it's just one of those things that you notice as you race. You can't see where you're going, so you ease off a bit, and that can lead to you losing a place. But then that can happen in real life racing too, so it's not a massive issue, just an observation. I've noticed also that the quality of the AI seems to be dependent on which track you're racing, which racing discipline you're racing in, and the current weather conditions. There are a certain number of conditions and tracks where the AI cars just cannot cope whatsoever. Normally after the first lap they kind of sort themselves out, and you have a few front leaders and a few at the back and a few in the middle. It kind of works itself out, and on the whole the AI is okay, but I certainly wouldn't say that it was as advanced as everything else seems to be in Project Cars 2. This is definitely the weak point of Project Cars 2. Project Cars 2 was built with Esports at the centre of its entire existence. Esports is the future of Project Cars 2, and probably Project Cars 2 is the future of esports. As I say, this was built with esports in mind, and they're not going to mess around with things like online play. This is going to be so important for the esports arena. To have the best of the best racing against each other, this could be incredibly big business. Even though it's focused on esports, there is plenty of offline options to keep you entertained. There are a few bugs at launch regarding multiplayer, but I'm absolutely certain that this is going to be resolved very quickly, no doubt on that whatsoever. The player ranking system ensures that you're not too far out of your depth, or from the other perspective, it makes sure that you're not hampered by Nobby No Flippin' Idea in his Aston Martin takeout tank. This keeps the online experience fresh, engaging, and gives you an incentive to improve. Let's be honest, doesn't everybody want to race against the very best? Except perhaps for Nobby and his tank, obviously. Online championships are coming. This is a great thing for this game, and I'm really interested to see how that's going to pan out. It's got a built-in dedicated broadcaster and director functionality. This in esports is essential. If things are going to get really serious here, and I think now that Project Cars 2 has arrived, then esports is going to get incredibly serious. At that point, you cannot rely on AI to do the director functionality or the broadcasting. This is something that human beings are going to have to take over and manage themselves. I've yet to delve into the career because I wanted to get used to the game before really having a go at it, and I'm looking forward to making a career series that I'm going to share with you guys. But I have to say it's similar in many ways to Project Cars 1, but it has been tweaked and improved. Project Cars 2 has changed the format, allowing you to choose your team and your race discipline. If you want to race in the GT3 Pirelli World Challenge though, you will have to earn the right to it. It is locked at the start and you have to race well in order to unlock it. The career mode is now intertwined with manufacturer drives and invitational events. These are basically rewards for being a good driver, and a lot of people have said that this really breaks up the monotony of driving in a single same experience. It gives you something different to do within your career. I think it's a nice touch, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that myself. The in-car management menu is a very powerful tool. Unfortunately, it's not voice activated like you'll find in F1 17 yet. I have a sneaky suspicion this might be something that's added, especially in the esports arena. This would be a very nice touch. The ICM allows in-car alterations and also allows you to change your pit strategy, which parts to repair and which ones not to repair, obviously because each one has a time penalty. You might be able to get away with a small bit of cosmetic damage in replacement for fixing a buckled wheel or brake. It can be a little cumbersome in game, and it does basically cause you to take your eye off the track, which is not a good thing. Given time, this should obviously become easier, but these are the limitations of not having a voice activated ICM. There are also some other game modes which are very good. There's time trial, which, as I mentioned before, I did take first place. It wasn't a good lap, but it did put me in first place for a short amount of time, and that's a small claim to fame. I could have beaten that time by a good 5, 8, 10 seconds, but I just couldn't seem to put it all together in one lap. Please, if it hasn't already been beaten, go and have a crack at that lap time and see what you can do. And if you beat me, let me know on the in the comment section, and I'll give you a little round of applause and then get my steering wheel out and see if I can return the favour. There are community challenges which are uploaded for a limited amount of time and then they're replaced with new ones. These are really quite nice actually, and it's interesting to pull you out of your comfort zone and put you into a race situation that you wouldn't necessarily go into, and it's nice to sort of have that competitive feel against the real world as well. You can obviously race against your friends, but you can also race against your friends with AI in the same race at the same time, and this is done on a peer-to-peer server setup, which makes it really quick and convenient to set up. I expect this is going to be a lot of fun and a really incredibly nice feature for Project Cars 2 to have included. Project Cars 2 has so many options and it is so versatile. We are basically talking about hundreds of thousands of possible combinations of race experiences. You've got online championships and the ranking system, which is essential if things are going to go down the esports route, which I think they are. And now that Project Cars 2 is here, it really does seem way more viable than it ever has done before. In all honesty, I'm still running largely on out-of-the-box mode, and No word of a lie, I'm absolutely loving it. A lot of YouTubers have said you're going to have to take time to set up your force feedback, you're going to have to get your settings right. To be honest with you, you don't. This game, out of the box for me, just plugged it in, turned it on, and just jumped into it, is working really well. Now the big thing here is, it is so much better than anything else that is available at the moment, that experience alone makes it better. Now in your first day, your first 10 minutes, your first week, you might not feel that, but eventually you'll get it. You will get it. I drove around a track in a Ferrari 360 GTO. You can really feel that car. That is not like your Ford Fiesta or your Mazda or whatever the hell car you drive, BMW. It's not the same. A Ferrari in a race configuration around a racetrack feels totally different to anything else you've driven, and this game matches that perfectly. Project Cars 2 is fully configurable, so you can set it up to suit your system. You can change the resolution, you can have locked or unlocked frame rates, you can change the sun flares, the heat hazes, the dirt on the screen, the crepuscular rays. Honestly, this game is incredibly versatile. You've got ultra settings, which are basically for the creme de la creme of PC rigs. This makes the game future-proof and VR ready. It's up and it's running now, and if you've got enough firepower, then reportedly, unfortunately I don't have VR, but reportedly this is absolutely brilliant for VR. It also runs full triple screen support. This means that you don't even require surround screen settings. Each screen is individually configurable. This is such a versatile game. They have really sat down and thought about this before they started building it. It doesn't feel like anything has been bolted onto the side here. They had a jolly good long chat about what they wanted to do and what was important to people, and then they went about figuring out how to make this game accommodate all of that. This is such a good game. Now unfortunately there are no preset suggestions, so you are going to have to work it out for yourself. Like I say, the default settings are pretty good, but when the rain and the snow comes, it can really hit your FPS, so you are going to have to do a little bit of tweaking just to make sure that you maintain your 60 or 90 FPS that you want in your game. Again, the number of tracks on cars and even collisions and the debris flinging about all over the place, all of this stuff can bring your FPS down, so you need to really kind of tweak it and play with it in a variation of settings until you find your absolute sweet spot. Failure to correctly set up your system can result in stutters and FPS loss. Predominantly I've heard this happening on the console versions and less so on PCs, but I guess if you don't have that powerful a PC, then this is something that you could easily experience yourself. Speaking of PS4, there is no VR for PS4 users at launch. This suggests that it is coming later, possibly. Also, Project Cars 2 is not 1800p ready at this time, unlike Forza 4, but to be fair, this game, Project Cars 2, has way more features and is way more realistic than Forza 4 in my humble opinion. So the fact that it doesn't run at 1800p at release, I don't think is a massive issue. And it's so configurable that I wouldn't expect it to be too long. Probably by the end of year one, this will already have been implemented. This is without doubt the most advanced, the most configurable and the most versatile racing simulator to date. The list of things that you can't do is way shorter than the list of things that you can do. This is brilliant. It works extremely well on both consoles and PC. VR support and plenty of future-proofing is already in place, with the potential for way more as patches and updates are released. Remember that they hit their release date. A lot of big releases don't manage that, and more often than not this means prioritizing features. So something like 1800p that you want to include at release, you might put that back and say we don't need that on release day. As long as we have these features, that can wait, and that's probably what's happened here. Chong from the Project Cars 2 team said, if you look at sim racing as a whole, there is a misconception that it needs to be really difficult or it's not a sim. In reality, a less accurate physics simulator does tend to make it more difficult to race. And I have to say, this game was way easier than any racing sim I've ever played before. Because it's modelled correctly, because it's giving you the information back that you want to hear, and it's behaving in a logical, sensible way, It just makes the whole experience more realistic and easier because you're not having to interpret certain movements and behaviours that you're not actually seeing. They are physically there, it becomes more tangible, and then it's easier to understand what the car is doing. In other simulators, you have to fill in those gaps way more. This Project Cars 2 brings you much closer to the realistic physics of a racing car. To be honest with you, unless you have yourself driven a supercar at speed, then you might not recognise the brilliance of this tyre model and the game physics all over. I have to say, this is just spot on. Although Project Cars 2 is available on console and PC, they don't appear to have dumbed anything down. In fact, what they have done is they have raised the capabilities for consoles. Even on a pad, this feels like real-life racing. It's truly exceptional. Now, I have less than no interest in racing this game or any other car simulator on a pad, but I know a lot of you do, and you are going to be so impressed, not only with the initial feel that you get from a pad, but the way that you can configure it to suit you is just sensational. This game is so far ahead of the curve. It's like Gran Turismo on the PS1 all over again. If you're not old enough to remember that, then fair play to you, but for those of you that do, wow, this game is the bee's knees. Other games have tried to emulate what Project Cars 2 have done here, Codemasters for one, on their Dirt Rally experience. They didn't really get it right. They were trying to make a simulator that was accessible to everyone, but they dumbed the simulator down in order to complete that, basically losing the simulation element and ruining the experience. Project Cars have managed to do this the first time I think this has really worked out properly, and they haven't lost one iota of the simulation element, not even one jot. Overall, the UI is neat, it's sporty, it's informative, and above all, it's intuitive. I have to admit, when I first opened it up, it was a little bit overwhelming, but pretty quickly, it all fell into place and everything just makes a lot of sense. More importantly, or perhaps more importantly, everything is quickly accessible from anywhere. So if you're in the middle of a race and you want to change a few things or tweak a few things up, you don't have to come out of the race, make your changes, load the race back up and go back into it. You can just do it on the fly. It's brilliant, and it's the way that all games should be, in my humble opinion. The car setup assistant mechanic is fantastic. This is going to help absolutely everybody. You can go fully assisted or manual on so many things in this game. One of the best things for me is the pit crew. This is fully animated, way improved over Project Cars 1, and the best pit simulation experience that I have ever had in a racing simulator, hands down. You can use a gamepad or a wheel, a PC or a console, and to be honest with you, the experience is still going to be just exceptional. It really doesn't matter what system you're running this game on, what platform you're on, or what level you race at. This is such a good and well thought out game. It's so well thought out that even on multiplayer, the way it splits professional racers and the beginner racers and sets them up individually enables everybody to have fun and remain competitive. I love the ranking system. It's really important. VR is hands down across the board. I haven't heard a negative thing about VR. I don't have VR myself, unfortunately. Hopefully one day I'll be able to try it out. The word on the street regarding VR is that this is just sublime, and I'm inclined to believe everybody. The loading of the tyres for a corner is sensational. It's unbelievably realistic, and everything that was missing from every racing simulator before now. You can feel the grip, and you don't just have to learn where the grip runs out. Basically, run a corner 50 times over and learn where you can push it and where you can't push it. This car will talk to you, and the amount of grip that you get will change, and you will notice it change, and you can feel it change. You can tell where it runs out. You don't have to imagine the grip, you can feel it. That's the biggest thing for me in this game. In one day, I have just learned so much more about sim racing, and it's not because I didn't know it before, it's because I couldn't feel it, and I couldn't successfully bridge the gap between knowing that I'd lost grip and feeling that I'd lost grip, because there wasn't really much feedback in racing games. You just you're going around a corner and then you're not. Then you're spinning out. One of the biggest complaints about Project Cars 1 was you're on the limit, you're over the limit, you're in the wall. There's none of that here. You can feel it come in. You know you're about to lose it. You know you're on the edge. And that is such a sensational feeling. So basically what I'm saying is that stuff that I already knew in theory in Project Cars 2 I can now relate it in real tangible terms, because the force feedback and the way that the modelling is done is just wonderful. As expected, there have been a few release day bugs. There really isn't anything to worry about if you ignore the AI. The race director does need a complete overhaul. Sometimes you're getting pulled up on stuff and there's nobody else on the track. You just have no idea what the problem is. Maybe it needs to be more informative, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it would be great if it was a bit more prominent so that you can tell when your brilliant lap time has been cancelled, and that might help you figure out where you went wrong. Maybe you went over a boundary, maybe there's something wrong with your car. It's not clear enough as it is. The career element is good. I don't think it's as good as F117, but then F117 is exceptional in its career element. I'm still not sure if Project Cars 2 models punctures. If it doesn't, then what the heck? How can you have a tyre model without punctures? There must be punctures in Project Cars 2. It's just difficult to get one, I guess. And I haven't seen anybody else who has had a puncture, so if you know whether Project Cars 2 does model punctures, and I assume it does at this point, then please just let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. The default camera settings, they're not great, but they are pretty adjustable, and the driver's helmet view has kind of excessive shake and lean, which, as I say, when you're sliding out and you catch the car from spinning out, you kind of get this rocking kind of thing going on. It's a little bit weird to get used to, but if you give it enough time, you'll find that it actually provides you with more feedback about what the tyres and the car are doing. So it's really clever the way they've done it, but because nobody's done it before, it does feel a little bit odd. But it's up to you, I guess, personal preference, whether or not you adjust that. The head tracking setup was a bit of a pain for me, but that was more to do with the external setup than the internal. Nothing really serious there, and it seems to be working pretty well for me. The weather is brilliant, but I've got to say the fog looks pants. Hopefully they can do a bit more with the fog, but I don't know, it's a complex, difficult area. I don't know how well that's going to work out. In conclusion then, I'm going to tell you that I still call my car the Pussy Wagon, but not for the reasons you might think. It's because that's where I go when I want to cry. And from this day forward, Project Cars 2 is where I'm going to go when I want to race. This game is exceptional. It's got much better physics than the first version, much better physics than any other racing sim. I'm unlikely to go back to anything else very often. The Setter tyre model and the bleeding edge tyre physics, plus the improved force feedback, and the LiveTrack 3.0 weather options, this game is just phenomenal. There's a great selection of new cars and classic cars for you to choose from, and there's an incredible selection of racetracks and variations available to you as well. This game is incredibly customizable for very different difficulty levels and race options. I've never been into Rallycross or Speedway, but in this game, both of those experiences have just been amazing. This game is pretty beautiful all over, but in VR, it's another level on, apparently. I haven't tried VR, but the feedback coming from all over the place about VR is just overwhelmingly positive. If you're a beginner and you're looking to get into sim racing, this is where you need to be. Don't bother wasting your money on any other sim. This is the one you want to get into, I promise you. In the future, I would like to see a lot more work done on tyre modelling. Maybe different types of tyres, maybe some Pirellis or Michelin or whatever. I'd like to see some variations, and I think this is just the beginning of tyre modelling, and I'm looking forward to seeing where not only Project Cars goes with it, but everybody else as well. It is quite literally exceptional and a total game changer. I have a sneaky suspicion that Assetto Corsa might be secretly working on something, which is great. Bringing such a huge step forward in simulation racing here, Project Cars, will just incite others to do the same. It's like a riot of simulation advances, and it's just wonderful to see. I'd like to see a bit more training in-game, perhaps some scenarios and challenges to get new players especially up to speed, or even just players like myself who aren't that fast but want to be faster. I'd love to see Steam Workshop and more DLCs and updates. You know, I'd like to see people get access to setups, liveries, cars, tracks, different disciplines maybe. There is so much that could be done with this game. The future for Project Cars is not only bright, it's incredibly exciting. And one last thing that I haven't mentioned at all throughout this entire thing, Project Cars 2 is also built to accommodate third-party add-ons. And I mentioned just a minute ago training in-game. there are a plethora of apps available that you can hook up to this game, and they will track your performance and they will give you feedback, and they are training add-ons. There are so many already. This is an area where I think a lot could happen. So having apps that connect straight onto your game, this is probably the best simulator I have ever laid my hands on. I'm so excited that I need to leave you now. Go jump on my steering wheel and just have some more fun. And I hope you're going to have a lot of fun with Project Cars 2. If you're on the fence about this one, hopefully I've just given you a gentle shove in the right direction, and that right direction should be into the track, onto your steering wheel, and just have an absolute blast. Thanks for watching. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Take care of yourselves till next time. Goodbye for now.